statements, he does not mention it as much in many of his books. And by this they say that he followed by this the way of the previous scholars, such as such as Imam Al-Bukhari rahimahullah, such as Imam Al-Bukhari in Sahih. So we won't start with his biography, since his biography rahimahullah is well known, since we've studied many of his books before. We'll start off with the beginning of the book inshaAllah, and then later on regarding the topic of the book and what the author, how he organized his book, will come later on inshaAllah. So he starts off with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And the reason why the scholars start off with Bismillah is for 4 reasons. The scholars they mention that the authors start off with Bismillah for 4 reasons. The first one is to follow the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For Allah started the Qur'an with what? Before Al-Fatiha, Bismillah. So to follow the Qur'an, for it started with Bismillah. And every surah in the Qur'an is started with Basmala except for which surah? At-Tawbah. Anyone know why that is? Anyone know why Surah Tawbah is not started with Basmala? Some say the contents of Al-Fal will continue on to Surah Tawbah, so it's like one surah, okay? Any other reason? Yes. Because the topics in Surah Tawbah are harsh towards the disbelievers. So, and Basmala shows Rahmah. So for that reason, some of the scholars they mention it was not mentioned. Other scholars they mention because Uthman radiallahu did not write it, so it is not mentioned. So there's many reasons for it, but these are some of the famous reasons for why Al-Basmala wasn't mentioned in the beginning of Surah Tawbah. The second reason why they start with Basmala is to follow the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his different writings and his letters which were sent to the different rulers at the time. As comes in Al-Bukhari from Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, that Abu Sufyan that the Prophet he sent to Herakl a letter, started with it, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, min Muhammad Abdullaah wa Rasulih ila Herakl Azim al-Rum. He started with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So this is one other reason why they mentioned that the authors they start with Bismillah. Anyone know which prophet they say is the first one to start his writings with Bismillah? Sulaiman alayhi salam. And what's the ayah? إنه من سليمان وإنه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The next, as for the hadith, كل أمر ذي بال لا يبدأ فيه ببسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فهو أبتر or فهو أقطع. Then this hadith is not authentic. That every matter which has importance and is not started with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, then that is something which is cut off or has no barakah in it, has no blessing in it. Then this hadith is not authentic. This hadith is not authentic. The third reason that they mention why the scholars they start with Basmala is to follow the way of the Salaf al-Salih and the scholars of Islam, for they started their books with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And the fourth reason is at-tabarruk, to seek blessing by Allah's name, by starting one's book with Allah's name, to seek aid from Allah to complete that book, to seek aid from Allah to complete it. And that is the last reason why they mention tabarruk biha, to seek blessings with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name, to start with it. So those are the 4 reasons why the scholars they mention that the authors they start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And that's something important to know, because in any book you read, the author starts with Bismillah. And if you go to the explanation of those books, they're going to mention these 4 things. Many of the scholars mention these 4 things. So if you memorize it, then it is easier and is as a review when you come by it. As for the first chapter, then he says, Bab Fadaa'il Al-Qur'aan wa ta'allumih wa ta'limih. Chapter, the virtue of reciting the Qur'an and learning it and teaching it. He says the proof for that is the statement of Allah, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah raises those who believe amongst you and those who have knowledge in levels. And Allah says, مَا كَانَ لِبَشَرٍ أَن يُؤْتِيَهُ اللَّهُ الْكِتَابُ وَالْحُكْمَ وَالنُّبُوَّةَ ثُمَّ يَقُولُ لِلنَّاسِ كُونُوا عِبَادًا لِي مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ وَلَكِنْ كُونُوا رَبَّانِيِّينَ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تُعَلِّمُونَ الْكِتَابَ وَبِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَدْرُسُونَ. That is not befitting for a human being that Allah gives him a book, وَالْحُكْمَ and nubuwwah. Al-hukm, some of them mentions knowledge, وَالنُّبُوَّةِ and prophethood. Then he says to the people, worship me, do not worship Allah, rather be rabbaniyin, with that which you teach of the book and with that which tadrusun, that which you study. So Bab Fadaa'il As for Fadaa'il Al-Qur'aan, then they say that the first one who wrote regarding Fadaa'il Al-Qur'aan was a Shafi'i in a book called Manafi Al-Qur'an. But this is debatable. One, because the book is not found. The book, there's no presence for the book. And many of the scholars, they mentioned that rather Shafi did not write that book because it's not found, first of all, to affirm that to him. Secondly, it was not mentioned by many of the scholars that came later on. So to say that he was the first one to write with it is debatable. For that reason, many of them, they say the first one to write regarding Fadaa'il Al-Qur'an was actually Abu Ubaid Al-Qasim Al-Sallam. Abu Ubaid Al-Qasim Al-Sallam was the first one to write regarding Fadaa'il Al-Qur'an, they mentioned. Others from them they wrote, like Al-Firyabi, An-Nasa'i, and Ibn Kathir. Other than them they wrote regarding Fadaa'il Al-Qur'an. And some of them, what they did was they placed certain chapters in their books. Like Bukhari has a bab, a chapter Fadaa'il Al-Qur'an. Similarly, At-Tirmidhi, Ad-Darimi. Other than them, they put chapters in their books of hadith, Fadaa'il Al-Qur'an, where they mention these narrations. And this shows, the Shaykh mentioned, that this shows the greatness of the Qur'an and the greatness of its virtue. And that its virtues are many that must be mentioned and made famous amongst the people, so that they can become accepted upon the Qur'an. Because if they read it, Allah will honor them by it, and raise them by it, and give them honor. So he says, paying concern to the Qur'an is something which is seeked at all times. And with that you'll have correctness in this dunya, and in your deen, in all of your days. But if a Muslim does not pay concern to the Qur'an, he says, that who are we going to wait for to pay concern to the Qur'an? Are we going to wait for the Jews to pay concern to the Qur'an? Are we going to wait for the Nasara to exonerate the Qur'an? Are we going to wait for the fire worshippers to honor it? Then he says, how is it that we find some of the Muslims, they are busied and occupied from the Qur'an, even during Ramadan, which is the season of al-khayrat, good deeds. He said, if the Muslims, they turn away from the Qur'an in Ramadan, then when would they pay concern to it? Even if in Ramadan they turn away from when would they pay concern to it? If a Muslim does not give time in the Qur'an, for the Qur'an in Ramadan, then when will he give some time to it? And then he says, specifically regarding the women who they busy themselves in Ramadan in stuff that has no ending to it. And you'll find that the people, they take the month of Ramadan and there is something saddening as a season of eating whilst it's a season of fasting. So this is an advice from the Shaykh that the Qur'an should be paid concern to, and to learn the fadaa'il of the Qur'an. By it you will know the virtue of it, and it will entice you to try to learn more of the Qur'an and read it, and not be from those who are preoccupied away from the Qur'an. Then he says that the author, he mentioned in this book many chapters, and he started this book with the chapter of the virtue of recitation of the Qur'an and teaching it and learning it and teaching it. Then after that he follows it with many important chapters. And if he says, if the reciter of the Qur'an were to know these chapters and acts upon it, then he will find the reward and the benefit of that. He will find the reward and the benefit of the recitation of the Qur'an. But if a reciter does not adorn himself with the chapters that will come of this Qur'an, of this book, they will not find the virtue of the Qur'an. He will not either find the complete virtue or the virtue at all. Or he will not see the reward of it. Meaning he will just merely read the Qur'an without having any intention of getting reward from it, or understand the virtues of this Qur'an. Understanding the virtues of this Qur'an. As for a statement, tilawa means recitation. So tilawa means recitation. But other scholars, they mention tilawa means three things. Tilawa is either done hifdhan, either by memorization of the Qur'an, or it's done fahman, understanding the Qur'an, or it is done by acting upon it. This is all tilawa. So to memorize and understand and act upon, that is tilawa. That is the true tilawa of the Qur'an, the true recitation of the Qur'an. As for the Qur'an, then it is well known that it is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, الَّذِي لَا يَأْتِيهِ الْبَاطِلُ مِنْ بَيْنِ يَدَيْهِ وَلَا مِنْ خَلْفِهِ, which no falsehood is in it, and no falsehood comes to it. Al-Munazzil min Rabbil Alameen, came down from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the best of and the most noble of the messengers, the last of the prophets. So this is the Qur'an which is well known, Kalamullah, غayru makhluq, the speech of Allah which is not created. And it's something the scholars have consensus upon. That is, minhu bada'u ilayhi ya'ud, from him it started and to him it will return. But does it come in the Qur'an that the word Qur'an means other than the book, the Qur'an? Anyone know? If it has any other meaning in the Qur'an? Anyone know? in the Qur'an, it comes the word Qur'an, but it does not mean the book, the Qur'an itself, but it means something else. As-salat. And what's the ayah for that? وَقُرْآنَ الْفَجْرِ إِنَّ قُرْآنَ الْفَجْرِ كَانَ مَشْهُودًا. So it could come with a different meaning, which is as-salat. And the reason for that is, they say, تَسْمِيَةً لِلشَّيْء بِبَعْدِهِ, to name something with some of it. We name something with some of that which it contains. Then he says, وَتَعَلُّمِهِ, meaning to learn the Qur'an so that you may become from those who understand or perfect its huruf, its letters, and makharij, the different exit points of the letters, وَأَلْفَاظِهِ, and the different words, وَالنُّطْقِ بِهِ, the different letters, and to how to utter with it, وَتَعْلِيمِهِ, and to teach it, meaning after you've learned it and you become one who is able to teach, then you teach it to other than you. And the Prophet said, لا حسد إلا في اثنتين, there is no envy except in two things. One, a man who Allah gave him wealth, so he spends it upon the truth, and another man who Allah gave him al-hikmah, and he basically yaqdi biha, he judges by it or leads by it and teaches it. And then narration Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu said, لا حسد إلا في اثنتين, and he mentioned رجل أتاه الله القرآن, a man who Allah gave him the Qur'an, فَيَتْلُوهُ آنَاءَ اللَّيْلِ وَآنَاءَ النَّهَارِ, a man who Allah taught him the Qur'an and he recited day and night. And then the narration of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu comes, رَجُلٌ عَلَّمَهُ اللَّهُ الْقُرْآنَ, a man who Allah taught him the Qur'an, فَيَتْلُوهُ آنَاءَ اللَّيْلِ وَآنَاءَ النَّهَارِ, a man who Allah taught him the Qur'an, he recited day and night. And then he says, فَسَمِعَهُ جَارٌ لَهُ فَقَالَ, he heard a neighbor of him say, لَيْتَنِي أُوتِيتُ مِثْلَ مَا أُوتِيَ فُلَانٍ, how much I wish or I hope that I was given similar to that which this man was given. فَعَمِلْتُ مِثْلَ مَا يَعْمَلْ, and I could do similar to that which he did. So learning the Qur'an and teaching is something which a person has ghibta towards his companion. Now hasad, it means that you want the person's bounty that Allah has given him, and you want it taken away from him as well. You want that bounty that he has, but you want it to be taken away from him as well. Whereas ghibta, it means you want that bounty, but you want the person that has it for it to stay with him as well. Meaning you want it for yourself and for him as well. Whereas hasad, envy, means you want it taken away and snatched away from him, but you want it for yourself. So in this hadith, la hasad means la ghibta, as the scholars they mention. As for the first ayah, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ, that Allah raises those who believe amongst you. The Shaykh mentions, if they act in accordance and in obedience to it, in obedience to the Lord, in that which they are commanded with. Meaning if they were to act with that which they are given of iman or belief, and act in accordance to it, then they will benefit by it and they'll be raised by it. He said, as for mere iman, without any actions at all, then it will not benefit them their iman. Because from iman is qawlun wa amal, statements and actions. And there is no iman without any amal. For Allah Azza wa Jal promised Jannah for the one who believes and acts righteous deeds and does righteous deeds. Then the statement, وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ, and those who have given knowledge, raised in levels. Meaning if they act in accordance to their knowledge, they'll be raised in levels. If they act in accordance to their knowledge, and this has been authenticated, reported from Ibn Zayd. Ibn Zayd, one of the Mufassirin, or those who have ihtimam with explaining the Qur'an from the Salaf, this authentically reported from him. Meaning, similarly they'll be raised. For the one who Allah gives him knowledge and acts in accordance to it, and does acts of good deed and worship, then he'll be raised. Because he does that which, because he knows of the different prohibitions, commands, that which the ignorant one does not know. It's been reported from Mutarrif ibn Abdullah ibn Shaykh that he said, فَضْلُ الْعِلْمَ هَبُّ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ فَضْلِ الْعِبَادَةِ, that the virtue of knowledge is more beloved to me than the virtue of worship. And in accordance to the amount of knowledge you gain, and in acting in accordance to it, you'll be raised in levels. So it differs. A person might have some knowledge, but he acts in accordance to every certain aspect of knowledge, he'll be raised by it. And then you might find a person who has knowledge, but does not act upon his knowledge. That person will not be raised by his knowledge. So this kind of raising is something which is hissiyya wa ma'nawiyya, meaning it's tangible and intangible. And it is something which will occur in this dunya and in the hereafter. For he says that the one who carries knowledge, the carrier of it, you'll find him that he is someone who is honored amongst the people. He is honored and looked at highly amongst the people. And in the sufuf of the prayer, he is put forth. And so this is something which is tangible. It's a tangible kind of rif'ah, being raised in this dunya. And obviously in the hereafter will be raised as well. So inshallah we'll stop with this for now and continue the study of the book next week inshallah. If there's any questions, we'll take it now. If not, we'll stop with this.